Welcome to the Alaska Weather Show on this Wednesday, May 12th, 2021. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan, and in today's weather, we continue to see just a continuation of a similar pattern we've been dealing with here for the past week or so. And if you would like get additional weather information, you can always go to weather.gov/Alaska. Plenty of information online. And the recorded phone bank, you can call 1-800-472-0391 for a recorded phone forecast. Well, one programming note I want to pass along and reemphasize, we do have a change. For those of you who join us through KTOO 360 TV, starting on Thursday, May 20th, the Alaska Weather TV show will air at 6:30 p.m. instead of 7:30, and this will occur thereafter daily. So keep that in mind, KTOO 360 TV, starting May 20th. This show will air at 6:30 p.m. Well, looking at the latest river breakup map, we have a flood watch that's been issued for the Yukon River in the vicinity of Circle. An ice jam had formed 18 miles above Circle. There continues to be a pretty good flow of ice through that region, and that the Fairbanks office is going to let that flood watch continue through Thursday noon, and will update accordingly should conditions change and require any type of warning, or if things begin to subside elsewhere. Further downstream, Galena's reporting a decent flow of ice there on the Yukon. Things are moving along, though, with the higher water levels and the fact we've had a fairly uniform breakup that's allowing for, at least so far, no major problems. But we always can use your help, and if you do see something important, such as some flooding or something unusual, we encourage you to let us know. And you can also send pictures or videos, whether you're on the ground or you happen to be flying. These are all helpful types of reports and information. You can submit them to nws.ar.aprfc@noaa.gov. Or if it's more urgent, if you are observing some significant flooding or a significant ice jam, you can call 1-800-847-1739 and speak with one of the forecasters at the River Forecast Center. So going on, taking a look at the cloud imagery, well, we have a few weather systems that extend from the Gulf of Alaska out through the North Pacific and Aleutians. Meanwhile, farther north, a large high pressure well north of the Arctic Ocean continues, though, with brisk easterly flow, is continuing to cause some areas of freezing fog along the Arctic coast. And there's also been some fog potential there along portions of the west and southwest coast. And as we go through the next couple of days, we're going to be watching that moisture over the Gulf of Alaska already is lifting up into the southeast, and additional moisture you see back there now south of the Alaska Peninsula. That's also going to be lifting off toward the northeast and give areas of south central and southeast some additional moisture. Meanwhile, interior areas have had just enough moisture with the daytime heating, a little instability to trigger some instability showers. They're scattered in nature, generally on the light side. In the mountains, it's still coming down as snow because it's still cold enough at the higher elevations. And there have been a few reports of some rumbles of thunder from around Galena eastward to Eagle and south to just north of the Anchorage area. And that'll be the case again on Thursday and into Friday afternoons, because we're getting to that time of year now where we just get a little bit of instability there that cause a flash of lightning and a rumble of thunder, though most of the lightning is in the cloud itself. So don't be surprised if if you're in south central areas or south of the Yukon River, if you hear rumble of thunder with a passing shower. Otherwise, as I said, moisture is moving again up into the southeast. In fact, southeast areas could pick up more substantial rain for this time of year, 1/2 to maybe 3/4 of an inch by Friday into Saturday. But before then, on this early Wednesday evening, the weather map shows low pressure lagging across the southern half of the state to the interior. Also low pressure back out over the Gulf of Alaska, extending south of the Southwest Peninsula in the North Pacific, and then back toward the west where the Aleutian low is sitting. And as we go through late tonight, early tomorrow morning, we'll continue to see, just with the nighttime cooling, there could be a few more snow shower level. The snow levels could come down a tad from the mountains, but not that much. Areas of freezing fog along the Arctic coast, and areas of fog possible along the southwest coast from near Norm all the way down to Dillingham. And then areas of light rain and lower cloudiness there from the tip of the Southwest Peninsula through the Aleutians. And as we go through Thursday, we are looking for, again, some scattered showers, perhaps an isolated rumble of thunder there along and south of the Yukon River down toward the southeast. And then also, as we go back into the Southwest Peninsula through the Aleutians, there we have kind of a double barrel low pressure rotating on up through with areas of light rain and lower cloudiness. And that feature will move on up toward Kodiak Island by Friday, pushing another wave of rain. That's the area rain was speaking of. It could produce over a half inch of rainfall across central and northern areas of the southeast panhandle here for the beginning of the weekend. Temperatures, though, for lows generally in the lower 40s in the southeast, mid-30s to around 40 degrees elsewhere. It could get down to near freezing at Glen Allen. Otherwise, Thursday afternoon from Ketchikan, 53, 51 on up over toward Haines. And then as we get toward the west, as warm as 61 there at McGrath. And as we go into Friday morning, low temperatures, lower 40s across the southeast, generally in the mid-30s to around 40 degrees elsewhere. Including the Kenai down toward Kodiak Island, where lows will generally be right around or a tad above 40. Friday afternoon could see 60 at Talkeetna, 63 at McGrath. Elsewhere along the coast, generally upper 40s, lower 50s. And as we head up to the north, Thursday morning, lows in the mid-teens along the Arctic coast, generally above freezing there through the Yukon Valley. And temperatures will stay below freezing during the day, Thursday afternoon there along the Arctic coast, but back up into the 50s to near 60 degrees along and south of the Yukon River before the Alaska Range. And for Friday morning, lows in the lower mid-teens along the Arctic coast, around freezing the upper half of the Yukon Valley, but generally above freezing, 30s to near 40 there. We get down toward Galena and areas further toward the south and west. And then looking for highs Friday afternoon could be up into the lower 60s along the Yukon River. And areas to the north will stay below freezing along the Arctic coast. And then finally, looking across the southwest into the Aleutians, lows will generally be in the upper 30s to around 40 degrees across much of the region. High temperatures Thursday afternoon in the Kuskokwim as well as Yukon River basins. The interior will see highs in the 50s to around 60 degrees. Along the Aleutian chain in southwest, generally 40s. And then as we go through Friday morning, lows will generally be above freezing in all areas due to some cloud cover and also proximity to the water. And then Friday afternoon, look for high temperatures again back up into the 50s to even some lower 60s along the Kuskokwim and Yukon rivers. As we take a quick check of the temperature outlook here for May 18th through the 22nd, we are looking for temperatures to average above normal, especially from west central areas into the interior along and just north of the Yukon River, and precipitation lightly above normal, mainly the southern two-thirds of the state.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Well, it's aviation weather time, and for planning purposes, looking ahead for Thursday into Friday, your flying weather Thursday morning will include areas of IFR conditions across the northern Gulf of Alaska into the southeast coast and northern areas of the inner waterways. Also along the northwest coast and then extending out along the Alaska Peninsula into the Aleutians. As a frontal system there will be producing light showers with some coastal fog likely. And then as we head through Thursday afternoon, we'll see IFR conditions linger there in the northwest coast with some freezing fog. Along the southeast coastal areas, we'll still continue to see IFR conditions with some light showers and light fog. And then back out across much of the Bering and from the Alaska Peninsula through the Aleutians, we're going to see some light showers along with some light fog. And for Friday morning, look for IFR conditions more widespread there along the north slope and Arctic coast, where still there will be a potential for lower clouds and some areas of freezing fog. Meanwhile, in the southeast, we will see still coastal areas there with IFR conditions, including the northern inner waterways, and then along the west coast and extending into the Aleutians, more widespread IFR conditions. Similarly, this pattern continues with IFR conditions along the north slope and Arctic coast, as well as much of the Bering, just hugging along and just off of the west coast, and up into portions of the Alaska Peninsula, all the way up into Kodiak Island. And a check of past conditions for Thursday. Anaktuvik will start out IFR, become MVFR in the afternoon with the worst conditions on the north end as you head north toward the north slope and Arctic coast. Same thing for Adigan, MVFR conditions in the morning, improving to VFR, especially south entrance and as you go south. Otherwise, further south and west, Lake Clark and Merrill should start out MVFR with visual flight rules developing as we go through the afternoon. Generally speaking, rainy should remain VFR throughout the day Thursday. For Windy Pass, MVFR conditions becoming VFR, and Isabel similarly MVFR becoming VFR by Thursday afternoon. Mentasta should generally hold on to VFR conditions, and Tanita will see MVFR conditions in the morning improving to VFR, and similarly Portage will be MVFR improving to VFR. The northern inner waterways there, Chilkoot and White Passes, should remain IFR throughout the day. And a check of freezing levels in the west, generally around or above 4,000 feet across the western half of the Yukon Valley, including the Seward Peninsula. And the pocket in the southeast areas below 2,000 feet along south central coast into the northern waterways. And as we go back toward the southwest, ahead of a frontal system there, we'll see in the eastern Aleutians and Alaska Peninsula, the tip of there between 4,000 and 6,000 feet. Icing potential will generally exist between 7,000 and 14,000 feet across the interior, where there will be a few scattered light rain showers, could even be a rumble of thunder develop around Eagle down through Northway. Otherwise, along the south central and southeast coast between 6,000 and 15,000 feet. In the west, icing potential there, northern Bering between 5,000 and 14,000 feet, and then with low pressure and the frontal system working its way through the Aleutians and the Alaska Peninsula between 7,000 and 14,000 feet. Quick check of upper level jet stream winds. We have a core of 115 knot winds off of Kodiak Island, northwesterly flow, and then as we go back toward the Aleutian chain, a weak circulation of low pressure there aloft, producing upper level winds of 50 to 60 knots across the eastern Aleutians into the tip of the southwest peninsula. Dropping down to 9,000 feet, we see strongest winds are along the southwest coast of 40 to 50 knots from the southeast and south ahead of that frontal system. Meanwhile, in the southeast, winds coming onshore with a weak low pressure circulation of 35 knots from the southwest there in the southeast. And then finally, getting down to the 3,000 foot level, we have a weak circulation, low pressure circulation there, the northern Gulf with winds upwards of 35 knots from the south-southwest affecting the southeast coastline. More importantly, there in the southwest and the Alaska Peninsula, we are looking for winds from the southeast and south ahead of that frontal system between 40 to as high as 65 knots. And a quick check of turbulence. Turbulence will generally be between the surface and 4,000 feet in the southeast and the southwest peninsula, and then surface to 3,000 feet there further in the western Aleutians. And that does it for your aviation weather. Always have a safe flight.
Floating hundreds of miles from Earth, astronauts get a unique perspective of our planet. While they might recognize landmarks, space is the only place they can see the very edge of our planet's atmosphere.
From orbit, particularly looking at the horizon, did bring to mind how thin the atmosphere is. It's like an onion skin around this great big ball of the Earth.
This uppermost layer of Earth's atmosphere, the ionosphere, also overlaps with the very beginning of space. It's the job of NASA's new mission, GOLD, the Global Scale Observations of the Limmendisk Instrument, to study this region, a region that isn't just for astronauts to explore, but that affects humans every day down on the ground. For one thing, this layer of the upper atmosphere helps protect us from harmful radiation and energy emanating from the sun. But in our modern society, it does so much more. It affects the smartphone that sits in your pocket and the radio waves that guide our airplanes. The ionosphere is a crucial layer of the atmosphere through which our communications and GPS signals travel. And when this region changes, it impacts those communication signals. Changes can occur above this region from the sun's activity, also known as space weather. Changes can also occur below from Earth's weather, such as hurricanes and wind patterns. Gold connects the dots between how space weather and Earth's weather shape the upper reaches of the atmosphere. But this region isn't easy to study. The ionosphere spans roughly 60 to 400 miles from Earth's surface, which is too high for aircraft and scientific balloons, and the lower regions are too low to easily study with satellites. What are attainable, however, are the swaths of red and green light shining out from the upper atmosphere. Formed when the sun's rays hit atmospheric molecules, this light, named airglow, comes from green and red bands of glowing gas. Some of the airglow is invisible to our eyes, shining in infrared and ultraviolet light, which can only be seen with scientific instrumentation. Taking advantage of our planet's natural glow is gold. The gold instrument, which is about the size of a mini-fridge, is hitching a ride on a commercial communication satellite, SES-14. The satellite's orbit lies 22,000 miles above Earth, where it can record images in ultraviolet light to monitor changes in airglow across the globe. These images give information on the temperature, density, and composition of particles in the upper atmosphere. Gold collects these observations faster than any mission has ever done before. It captures an image of Earth's entire disk every 30 minutes, allowing scientists to see how the upper atmosphere evolves throughout the day. Gold joins a host of missions studying the very nature of space, around Earth, the Sun, and planets. As NASA ventures farther and farther from home, knowing the nature of space itself is crucial for our journey to understand our solar system and beyond.
There's a new class of chemical compounds impacting the Earth's ozone layer and raising concerns among some scientists. But a new NASA analysis indicates stratospheric ozone could actually be impacted more by climate change and the continued release of already banned chemicals. The Earth's ozone hole is showing signs of recovery, decades after the landmark agreement called the Montreal Protocol that banned many chemical compounds harmful to the ozone layer.
So we know the Montreal Protocol was a huge success. This was signed in the late 1980s when scientists and policymakers from around the world gathered together to try to save the ozone layer.
The chemicals they regulated persist in the atmosphere for many decades. They thin the ozone layer and they create a seasonal hole over Antarctica. They basically take away part of our planet's natural sunscreen, and that increases the risk of skin cancer and damage to plants.
Scientists have projected the ozone hole could disappear almost completely by about 2075, but several factors could delay that recovery.
There are some industrial compounds that are not banned by the Montreal Protocol, but as they enter the atmosphere, they will also hurt the ozone layer.
But the unregulated compounds have a short lifespan in the atmosphere, unlike the chlorofluorocarbons that were originally regulated. So they have a short-lived impact on ozone, and we don't think they'll delay recovery by more than a few years.
We projected by 2050, more than half of the ozone-depleting compounds in the atmosphere will come from long-lived substances banned by the protocol.
Because these compounds stay in the air for such a long time, compared to the unregulated, short-lived compounds, they will have a disproportionate and lingering impact on ozone. So any non-compliance with the protocol can have significant consequences.
And the really big uncertainty in ozone layer recovery is climate change. There are many naturally produced ozone-depleting substances that are emitted by the oceans. And as the oceans continue to warm due to climate change, those emissions will increase, and that will further delay ozone recovery.
Scientists want to better understand how climate change will affect ozone recovery.
This is a hard problem. As a scientific community, we need to work on this major issue. We now have a powerful new tool to simulate atmosphere and its interaction with land and ocean to study this issue. And that's what we're going to do.
How can you see the atmosphere? The answer is blowing in the wind. Tiny particles known as aerosols are carried by the air around the globe. This visualization uses data from NASA satellites combined with our knowledge of physics and meteorology to track 3 aerosols: dust, smoke, and sea salt. Sea salt, shown here in blue, is picked up by winds passing over the ocean. As tropical storms and hurricanes form, the salt particles are concentrated into the spiraling shape we all recognize. With their movements, we can follow the formation of Hurricane Irma and see the dust from the Sahara, shown in tan, get washed out of the storm center by the rain. Advances in computing speed allow scientists to include more details of these physical processes in their simulations of how the aerosols interact with the storm systems. The increased resolution of the computer simulation is apparent in fine details like the hurricane bands spiraling counterclockwise. Computer simulations let us see how different processes fit together and evolve as a system. By using mathematical models to represent nature, we can separate the system into component parts and better understand the underlying physics of each. Today's research improves next year's weather forecasting ability. Hurricane Ophelia was very unusual. It headed northeast, pulling in Saharan dust and smoke from wildfires in Portugal, carrying both to Ireland and the UK. This aerosol interaction was very different from other storms of the season. As computing speed continues to increase, scientists will be able to bring more scientific details into the simulations, giving us a deeper understanding of our home planet.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back, and it's now the marine weather segment that we'll be talking about first with the sea ice edge today, looking at more of the northwest and Arctic coast segment. As far as the ice southern extent is to about Nunavik Island, and we're going to see across this region mainly an easterly or northerly component to the wind, so the ice is going to still where there's been the Polyneas open up and where there's more in the way of some open water. The ice will tend to drift in some areas a little bit toward the south and west here over the next couple of days as low pressure continues to spin up through the eastern Aleutians. Otherwise, low pressure that's in the Gulf of Alaska is going to cause winds the inner waterways to be out of the southeast, generally an east or southerly component there, 10 to 15 knots, waves 2 to 3 feet from Ketchikan all the way up to Lynn Canal. And then along the coast there of the Gulf, 20 to 30 knot winds turning from south to more easterly by the time you get up to Yakutat. And waves generally swells around 8 feet. And then for Friday, we are looking for southeast winds upwards of 20 knots with the waves running 3-4 feet the inner waterways, and south to southeast winds around 20 knots with swells 6 to 7 feet. For south central areas on Thursday, at least along the Gulf, winds out of the north-northeast. Prince William Sound, 10 knots, about 2 feet off the Kenai, and Kodiak Island, northeasterly to 20 knots, waves 6 to 7 feet. And at the mouth of Cook Inlet, easterly 15 knots and waves 3 feet. For Friday, more of an easterly component to the wind over the Gulf, as well as in Prince William Sound, where 15-knot winds producing waves at 2 feet. However, as you get along the Kenai offshore there, 7 to 9 footers down toward Kodiak, as well as at the mouth of Cook Inlet, where easterly winds will be upwards to 25 knots. Finally, Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, we are looking for easterly winds generally in the 20 to 30 knot range, but picking up to 40 knots once you get down toward the tip of the southwest peninsula, Sandpoint to Cold Bay. with swells 10 feet plus, especially at the Bering side. And then as we go into Friday, notice as occluded front lifts northward, winds are going to try to turn more toward the south-southwest along the tip of the southwest peninsula there at 25 knots. Waves on the Pacific side upwards to 10 feet, elsewhere generally 5 to 8 feet. And across the Aleutians, you'll see ahead of the frontal system winds out of the south-southwest there, anywhere from as high as 30-40 knots on Alaska to 20-25 knots as you get from Nikolsky on over toward Adak. And swells generally in the 7 to 9 foot range and turning more around to the northwest there, the western Aleutians upwards to 30 knots by Friday, with swells in the west at 10 to 12 feet. Along the Pacific side, we are looking for winds upwards to 30 knots out of the southwest and west, with swells as high as 15 feet. And then going along the west and southwest coast, where in the open waters, easterly winds 30 knots, swells up to 10 feet. Then by Friday, winds trying to turn more northeasterly over the broken ice, and upwards to 20-25 knots there to the north of Nunavik Island, and 20 knots from the southeast and 8-footers there around St. Paul and St. George. Going further north to the Arctic coast, 30-knot winds from the east, Prudhoe Bay to Katovik, and we are looking for along the northwest coast down through Kotzebue and Nome, winds out of the east-northeast 15 knots or so, turning a little more northeasterly with time about 15 knots. So again, I tend to support a drift of the ice toward the southwest a little bit, where there has been some breaks developed in the ice and the water's opened up a bit. Thursday's weather, low pressure lifting through the Gulf of Alaska, flinging moisture up there along the southeast coast, with additional rains expected late in the week. System there in the Aleutians, double barrel low with a frontal system spinning and rotating on up toward the north and east. You see that low get up over Kodiak Island by Friday, with that low sitting out over the central and eastern Aleutians. One other final programming note here before we close the day. Just want to remind you again, like at the beginning of the show, starting on Thursday, May 20th, Alaska Weather will air at 6:30 p.m. instead of 7:30 daily on KTOO 360 TV. So again, thank you for watching and have a great evening.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.